Everyone, we'll just give it a minute for some more people to arrive, and then we'll get going. Greetings, everyone. Thank you to everyone who is attending this evening. To respect everyone's time, we'll get started on schedule. Welcome to our town hall on emergency preparedness. Those I don't know yet, I am Mayor Sean Krausert. Here's how the format will work. I will take the first 15 minutes to provide some update on emergency preparedness. For the rest of the time, I'm opening it up to you to ask whatever questions you might have. And the questions don't need to be related to the update I'm providing today. If you'd like to speak, use the chat function and send a message to register to speak, and your name will be added to the list. When you hear your name called, the meeting host will unmute you and give you permission to start video when it's your turn to speak. If you feel more comfortable submitting an anonymous question to be asked by the moderator, you can follow the same process. Send a message to register to speak and type your question instead. Please be sure to have your microphones muted and videos off unless you've been called upon to speak. If we don't get to all the questions, you can always email me at sean.krausert@canmore.ca, and you can find that email address on our website as well. I really look forward to hearing people's questions. Of course, please try to keep your comments and questions to a maximum of 3 minutes per person so that we can get to as many people as possible during the next 60 minutes. Well, I'm sure I don't need to remind everyone, I would ask that everyone remain respectful this evening. So let's get started. Wildfire, of course, is the top-rated risk in Canmore's hazard identification and risk assessment, and continues to be a priority for the Canmore Emergency Management Agency. When Canmore started as a small mining town, the valley was relatively open with a young forest. As Canmore grew, so did that forest, and the community is now integrated and surrounded by evergreen trees such as spruce and lodgepole pine, species that are not resilient to wildfire. Canmore has not had a wildfire in a long time, which has allowed us to focus on the preservation of trees, and over time, we have accepted the risk of being developed into the forest. Now we are in a period of not if the forest will burn, but when. Canmore's wildland-urban interface is extreme, and the risk of wildfire disaster is high. Wildfire seasons that have occurred in the province and across the country the last few years, and the increasingly frequent occurrences of wildfire smoke impacting the community. It is no surprise that residents' concerns about wildfires have been increasing as well. In the coming slides, I'll be going over what we are doing in Canmore to 1, prevent and mitigate wildfire, 2, emergency preparedness, 3, emergency response, and 4, recovery. In Alberta, emergency management is governed by the Emergency Management Act. Locally, we have been working on our emergency management program diligently for over a decade. The Town of Canmore has an emergency management agency. The agency is comprised of Town of Canmore employees in key departments, senior administration, and key partner agencies such as Alberta Health Services, the RCMP, neighboring municipalities, Tourism Canmore Kananaskis, Alberta Forestry, Canadian Rockies Public Schools, and more. We meet quarterly, and the agency is updated on emergency management activities taking place within the municipality and the region. Canmore's emergency management program looks at all aspects of the emergency management continuum, from prevention and mitigation to preparedness to response and recovery. The work done by the Emergency Management Agency is not just about plans, but includes how we identify, assess, and mitigate hazards, the capital projects we have on the go, the training we do, the grant funding we apply for, the relationships we build both internally and externally, and the countless other activities we do to manage the impacts of disaster. There are several ways the Town of Canmore works to prevent wildfires from igniting and preventing their spread through the community. One small way was last June, Council passed a fireworks ban bylaw to prohibit the use of fireworks except for at public events on July 1st and December 31st. The fire ban bylaw also allows the fire chief to declare a fire ban when conditions warrant. Generally aligns with conditions declared by the Calgary Forest Area, which is one of 10 provincial forest management areas in Alberta. FireSmart is a framework that is designed to mitigate the risk and educate residents and stakeholders regarding the potential for large, uncontrollable wildfires near communities and critical infrastructure. Significant amount of development that interfaces with wildland forest, and there are many pathways for fire to affect structures within our community. Fires within these areas can result in fire suppression challenges due to the different burning characteristics of wildland fuels and buildings. The town frequently applies for and receives grants from the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta to partake in vegetation management or fuel reduction on municipal, provincial, and private lands. This vegetation management helps create buffer zones that reduce the intensity and rate of spread of a wildfire approaching a development. It is important to note that while these buffer zones reduce a threat of wildfire, they do not ensure structure survival. Instead, fire guards and fire breaks can be more effective in stopping a fire pathway. The town will continue to pursue grants to fund projects to increase our resilience and reduce the threat of wildfire. The Canmore Fire Rescue Department provides free FireSmart home assessments, which can help owners determine what work could be done to mitigate the spread of wildfire to their residents. These assessments focus on the home ignition zone and can be booked online at canmore.ca/firesmart. Our plans don't just sit on a shelf. We participate in training and exercises to ensure we are continually improving and preparing for a potential response. In 2021 and 2022, we hosted functional exercises to test our wildfire and evacuation plans. These were excellent training opportunities to work with our partners, including Alberta Forestry, in practical situations. In 2022, we included a door-to-door evacuation simulation in the Larch and Fairholme neighborhoods. This allowed us to test our assumptions on evacuation triggers and times. Just this year, members of the Town of Canmore's protective services and fire rescue departments have participated in training exercises in 3 different municipalities. These opportunities are not only great practical training exercises, but also allow us to continue to build those important relationships with key agencies and neighboring communities. This year, we have changed the way that we internally discuss and assess hazards. Key members of administration meet on a weekly basis to discuss wildfire threat, flood risk, and drought and water restriction status. This helps us create a comprehensive picture of the overall risk profile in Canmore and regularly connects key players of the Emergency Management Agency to share information, updates, and shared understanding of how the hazards are impacting or interacting with each other. Hazard monitoring information is now shared in one easy-to-view spot on the Town of Canmore website at canmore.ca/hazards. That's canmore.ca/hazards. And any actions required by the community will be shared more broadly. The wildfire in Deadman's Flats has been framed by some in the community as evidence that the town does not have plans or that we will not be able to evacuate. While the wildfire hazard itself did not directly impact the community, there were impacts felt across Canmore by way of traffic congestion and lack of traffic management. Fire near Deadman's Flats is not indicative of what an evacuation would look like in Canmore, but we have learned a lot from that event. People were trying to drive in the same direction as the hazard, not away from it. And without a traffic management plan in place, that led to a lot of congestion in town, and some neighborhoods with limited access were more impacted than others. Some specific hazard and evacuation plans are not shared publicly because they outline what actions could be taken in a response. But what actions are taken are very dependent on the variables present during the response. For example, with the wildfire response plan, there are several variables that affect the response, including location of fire, weather conditions, day of the week, and time of the day. We want to make sure we are communicating accurate information to keep people safe. I do want to acknowledge that there are some challenges we will face when evacuating. We have limited access in and out of the community, and some of the neighborhoods in town are developed on steep slopes and with limited access in and out. We also have a lot of people in the community who do not have a personal vehicle. These pre-existing conditions make early evacuation warnings critical to public safety within our community. We are committed to sharing emergency information as soon as we are able. And one way for the community to get that early information is by making sure they have access to the emergency alert notification systems. The town of Canmore uses both the Alberta Emergency Alert System and Voyant Alert. Alberta emergency alerts are able to push intrusive alerts, which automatically interrupt public broadcasting on televisions, radios, and mobile phones. It does not require a sign-up. Voyant Alert is an additional system that allows the town to send timely alerts during critical events, which can be received by residents, visitors, and businesses through a mobile app, text messages, voice calls, or emails. The system also allows us to tailor specific information based on the incident site area or evacuation zone and ensures the community has received most relevant information to them in an emergency. Please sign up. Sign up is required to receive Voyant alerts. Early notification and communication is even more effective when the community is prepared for a disaster. For me personally, Janet and I have signed up for Voyant Alert, and I'll let you know where that is later on. We also have a couple of storage bins in our basement full of supplies in case we need to shelter in place. And we have gone through the exercise of making a complete yet concise list of what we would need to take in the case of an evacuation that we could gather within 5 minutes or so, and organize things so that they are easy to grab, including having emergency cash, the car always at least half full of gas, etc. Later in May, we'll be launching the Canmore Community Preparedness Guide that we are preparing with some of the feedback we collected in the Community Preparedness Survey. This guide will outline emergency preparedness actions like the one I've listed above that can be taken by the community to lessen their vulnerability to disasters. Once finished, the guide will be available on the Town of Canmore website and will be shared through social media and other digital platforms. The guide will include important information such as how to create personal or family emergency plans and how to prepare the household, including pets, for either an evacuation or shelter in place. If there is a wildfire in Canmore, fire rescue will provide the initial attack response, and we will immediately notify Alberta Forestry and enact our mutual response plans. Alberta Forestry will focus on the suppression of the wildfire, and Canmore Fire Rescue will focus on impacts to life, safety, critical infrastructure, and structures within the town. There would likely be a call to our mutual aid partners in the region, and the municipal emergency management plan would be activated. We would assess if there would be a need for an evacuation and potentially declare a state of local emergency. Traffic management and control plans would be developed and activated to respond to the current conditions. We would also activate our emergency social services plan to support the community throughout the event. What makes the jobs of emergency responders easier during a wildfire is when the community is informed and follows the directions issued in emergency alerts. Alerts provide real-time information about imminent threats and are used to guide the community on life-saving actions, including safe evacuation routes and shelter locations. Canmore is no stranger to experiencing recovery after disaster. The 10th anniversary of the 2013 floods was just last year, and we continue to build mitigation projects to help our community stay resilient. Recovery starts before a disaster hits, and the town has developed a disaster recovery framework so that we can work quickly to reestablish social, cultural, physical, economic, environmental, personal, and community well-being. At the heart of our recovery framework is transparent communications and genuine community engagement to ensure the town is in tune with the community's needs, values, and aspirations after a disaster. You can find out more information and sign up for Voyant Alert at canmore.ca/emergency preparedness. That's canmore.ca/emergency preparedness. Alberta is preparing for dry conditions this year, and we need to be ready for potential water shortages. There are times when the town of Canmore may need to call on our community to temporarily reduce water use to make sure that there is enough water to meet our essential needs, including water for drinking and fighting fires. In alignment with other regional municipalities, we are launching a mandatory outdoor water restrictions program that will come into effect in the event of a water shortage. There are 4 stages of restrictions that apply to non-essential outdoor water use based on the severity of the shortage, with some exemptions for health and safety reasons or for core business needs. Outdoor water restrictions will be announced through local media outlets, our website, social media, temporary signage, and Voyant Alert, our direct-to-call, text, and email notification service. You are responsible for staying informed and acting if restrictions go into effect. Well, that's the end of my presentation. Now we'll get to the questions. As I said before, feel free to ask questions about what you just heard or about anything else that you're wondering about. I do have support here with me on the line with some members of senior administration, as well as Caitlin Miller, our Manager of Protective Services and Director of Emergency Services. Feel free to ask any of those questions, and we want to go, if you want to do so, you want to use the chat function and send a message to register to speak. Your name will be added to the list. When you hear your name called, the meeting host will unmute you and give you permission to start your video. Feel more comfortable submitting an anonymous question to be asked by the moderator, you can follow the same process and send a message to register to speak, type your question instead. And just before we get to questions, and another plug to sign up for Voyant Alert. If you sign up tonight, you'll be able to see how it works almost immediately, because there will be a test of the Voyant Alert system tomorrow at 10 a.m. So please go to canmore.ca/emergency preparedness, find out more information, and sign up for Voyant. Adam, we have the first question.
We do. Thank you for that, Mayor Krausert, and thanks for the plug on the test alert for Voyant tomorrow. Our first question is one we received in advance, actually, as we asked the community throughout April what they would need to know to be prepared for an emergency. So we had a number of questions submitted online through our mycanmore.ca public engagement platform. So the first question is, how do I evacuate if I do not have a car or need assistance?
Well, you know, that's an excellent question. I was just reading about what they're doing with and currently with evacuations in Fort McMurray, and those with cars are able to get out, and those with not, there's muster points established where they can make a connection, and there will be transportation provided for the residents as well as their pets. But I'm going to turn it more specifically over to Caitlin Miller, because I'm hoping that you'll be able to help advise as to how do those that don't have a car respond to the evacuation.
Thanks, Mayor Krausert, and that's a really good question, and one that I actually receive frequently. So if you don't have a vehicle, and a lot of people are, walking, biking, taking the bus to work, or to get around town for errands. So frequently there might be times where you don't even have a vehicle when you're doing your day-to-day lives within Canmore. So paying attention to those emergency alerts and knowing where the assembly points are. So that would be detailed in the emergency alert. So some examples of assembly points are the bus station on 9th, just outside of the Civic Center, Elevation Place, the church over by Palliser. So we do pre-plan those locations and then use the ones that are most applicable and safest to get to, because they have to be accessible. We also work with Rome. We work with the Canadian Rockies Public School Division so that we have additional transportation that we can redirect, and large transportation, mass transportation, so that we're able to gather people as we need to be able to help evacuate them from the community.
That's great.
Thanks very much, Caitlin.
Mayor Krausert, did you have anything else to add to that?
I remember with the potential evacuations in 2013, there was some from the Lady McDonald neighborhood, of which I was included, and my family evacuated. But there was also a fear of overland flooding from the Bow when they were opening up the Minnewanka Dam. And I remember hearing a story of how there was, in anticipation if evacuation was needed, they were setting an evacuation route based on where they predicted the water would go. And one of the evacuation routes for part of the town was past the provincial building. And at the same time, after they had prepared that, there was a bomb threat. And so this is an example in the provincial, from the provincial building, or with respect to that building. And so that's a good example of how these are evolving situations. And you can't have a one size fits all evacuation route. They change over time, and they change based on the circumstances. And so obviously you can't evacuate by a building that's under a threat of. So they had to, reroute a different route. Thankfully, we didn't need to use any of that evacuation planning, but that was all happening in the background. So I just wanted to share that as part of the situation that we have to deal with here.
Oh, that's a great example, Mayor Krausert. And you seem to be cutting out every now and again. Mostly it's good, but
okay,
we'll let you know if it gets worse.
Okay.
And with that, we have our first live question. So I'm going to ask Allison Penny. Please go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, lovely. What I would love to ask is, it feels to me like Banff is way ahead of us in emergency preparedness. For instance, the delivery of, what you should pack for your emergency escape, articles. They've had that was delivered by hand to every single home, not just home, but every single condo, so that it doesn't matter if you're a rental or not, everybody received it. And they received a green ribbon to put on their doors so that because the local fire people who are volunteer know that you put that on your front door when everybody is out of your house, so that they know not to come into that house, that house has been evacuated. They're just, I actually asked my friend to send me the list that she received from Banff Town of what they should put in their emergency kits. I'm just curious why we are so far behind.
Before passing it over to Caitlin, I will make a couple of preliminary remarks. We've long had on our website the list of what you can prepare. That's what I used for my preparation in my house. That's been up for a while. And we are, as I mentioned during the presentation, we're actually creating even a more enhanced emergency preparedness guide that will be sent out this month. I would also note that Canmore and Banff, while both mountain communities, out in how we're designed, their square footage is so much smaller than ours. It's a very different scenario. They have their challenges, we have ours, but even though we are close mountain communities, there's very different challenges that we have to face. And so I'll pass it over to Caitlin.
Thanks, Mayor Krausert. Yeah, just to echo, the information has been online on canmore.ca and is available by both the Alberta provincial government on their website and on the Canadian government website as well. So the information has long been public, and what Banff has listed is nothing new that isn't already out there. That said, we've heard from the community that they would like something that's specific and tailored to Canmore, which is why we're creating the Community Preparedness Guide to help address that gap or perceived gap, really, and be able to provide Canmore residents with a similar type community preparedness guide that they can use to help plan their own emergency preparedness planning. We do work very closely with Banff. We actually have a regional emergency management plan with Banff. And we build off of each other's work all the time and are very collaborative with the town of Banff. I was actually at their wildfire forum last week, ahead of our Fire Smart forum that will be scheduled for later in June. So that's just, we work together on a lot of different plans, on training. Our fire rescue teams both interact and work together as well. So while they've had this public piece of preparedness out there for a little longer than we have, it's a great idea, and we're happy to follow suit with our own Canmore Community Preparedness Guide.
Thanks, Caitlin. What about the, can you say anything about the green ribbons? Is that something that's something that is thought about in Canmore? Or?
We have thought about it. It works well when people are keeping track of that green ribbon. We do, when we go door to door, we still make sure that you're there, and we actually mark the door as well. And that's something that Banff does as well. So if there is no ribbon, we make sure, and we do similar marking styles. It's a pretty standard evacuation procedure.
I'll just note, I just happened to see a question just pop up in the chat about not being able to find the information. It's really, really easy. If you go to the Town of Canmore website, it opens right up. There's a search bar. Just type in emergency preparedness. Pops right up. What you're looking at is the Voyant Alert and how to register. That's number one thing you should do. Number two, if you scroll down, there's a section called Be Prepared. And if you click the plus sign there, it opens all up there, and it talks about build your own emergency kit, pet preparedness, make an emergency plan, and emergency preparedness. And then it talks about know your neighbor. It talks about in case of emergency evacuation. Ton of information there. Just go to the Town of Canmore website, emergency preparedness.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for your question, Allison. We're starting to get a number of questions in the chat, so we'll go to one of those. And just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, you can send it to register to speak in the chat, or just put your name in that you'd like to ask a question directly, and we will get to the questions. So Mayor Krausert, our next question. In reading about natural disasters that have occurred in other communities, two things stand out. First, communications infrastructure goes down early, and second, seniors die at a higher rate than the rest of the population. Accordingly, what is Canmore doing to harden its comms infrastructure, and what extra precautions are being taken to ensure the safety of seniors?
Okay, I'm going to turn that. Those are very specific questions, and so once again, I'm going to ask Caitlin to provide some enlightenment on those two questions.
Could you repeat the communications question? Just I had a
yeah. So basically, how do we protect communication systems, and secondly, how do we specifically protect seniors?
Oh, perfect. So we do have plans if there's networks that go down, and how to communicate otherwise. Like I did see in the chat as well that somebody did have a question about if you're not using a handheld device, and that's one of the beauty aspects of Voyant Alert, is that it isn't reliant on needing a handheld device or a TV. It can also, you can sign up and register your landline as well. So that's just another way that we keep going with communications. We do have the ability to bring in additional towers, communication towers, if we need to. The hardening of communication towers is something that we've recently looked at with our climate emergency action plan that we're currently developing. So it is on the radar as to how we protect our critical infrastructure. And then in terms of seniors and how we protect seniors, last year we offered an e-prep course during Seniors Week, and we are planning to do some similar engagement this year to help during Seniors Week to have a time where we can assist people sign up for Voyant Alert. So we're really excited about that opportunity. If we need to evacuate seniors lodges, they are on our vulnerable population list. So we do ensure that we have early activation of our evacuation procedures and emergency procedures during an emergency event. And we continue to look for ways with our family and connections and social services centers and programs so that we have constant engagement and the ability to connect people with the right resources. We also know that our partners at AHS often provide the ePrep course virtually online, and anyone can take it. We also encourage people to get to know their neighbors. And by knowing your neighbor, you know who's vulnerable, you know who might need extra help during an emergency, and you know who you might be able to help in an emergency. So it's really important to get out there, meet those people in your neighborhood, know who's vulnerable and who you might be able to help out to help in the overall community response.
Would add to, I mean, there's certain things that we will not be able to control. I mean, with communication systems, a lot of those are larger and beyond the town of Canmore. I found through the through the, let's say for the flood, I was in an affected area in which my utilities were all affected, my electricity, all of that was affected before we went out, but my phone was fine. I should also note that during that emergency, we had firefighters knocking on our door. And so, that really was helpful as well, just to help us know what we were supposed to do, since we didn't have Voyant Alert at that time.
And I'll just add that the added benefit of Voyant Alert is that we're able to send out information ahead of it being an intrusive alert that you might get through the Alberta Emergency Alert. So we want to make sure that we have early activation of our emergency coordination center and early alerting as well, so that people have information ahead of time. And that's one of the reasons that we created the hazards page. So we want to share the hazard monitoring that we're doing so that the community can stay informed as well. The more that you know about what hazards are, what our concern level is, the more you can prepare or start to prepare within the community.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
We're going to switch gears slightly, Mayor Krausert, somewhat still related. Can you provide an update on the Climate Emergency Action Plan? I believe it was originally going to be released in April. Are there any dates that it's coming to council? Or I believe council did see it already.
Right here. I'm sorry, did somebody just say something?
I said, I believe council did see it already.
Yeah, so the Climate Emergency Action Plan be a presentation to a committee of the whole on June 18th. And it's going to be coming for approval on July 2nd. It's important to note that many parts of the Climate Emergency Action Plan already exist. And a lot of the benefit of this plan is pulling in together things that already exist and updating them. And so it's not that we're without one, is that we are going to get a better one. And so those are the dates that you can look for it. It will be in the agenda package for the committee of the whole in mid-June, so a month from now, and then it will be approved or considered for approval and presumably approved at the July 2nd council meeting.
That's great. Thank you for that. Our next question, beyond the current Fire Smart program, what are the medium to long-term fire mitigation plans?
I can tell you from a high level, and then open the door once again for our expert, Caitlin, to speak to that. We've been dedicated to Fire Smart for many years, and in fact, we're getting to places to clear again that we've cleared before, and that's really important. And then there's also the individual responsibility to make sure that your home is also Fire Smart. So that is something that we've been doing for quite a while. What we have been doing very recently is I've been advocating to the Minister Lowen, who's in charge of forestry and parks, and wanting him to really push the Bow Valley Wildfire and Vegetation Management Plan that is currently being done. It's a strategy document that will help outline the direction for things throughout the Bow Valley. The reason that's important is it then gives the direction for fuel mitigation in areas beyond our town limits. Simultaneous to that, and the minister has responded, and he has encouraged the completion of that, and it is expected to be completed by the end of this month. Concurrently, the minister also launched another grant program that Canmore, along with our municipal partners in the area, have applied for. And the first phase of it is detailed planning with regards to the fuel modifications in the Bow Valley, where it's needed, and presumably mostly outside the national park, because that's dealt with by the federal government. But we received that grant, and that planning is going to be underway. Council was advised of the approval of the grant at the May council meeting, and administration worked very quickly to get in front of us a motion to approve capital plan. So we acted instantaneously upon receiving that approval to get that going quickly. So there's your short-term and medium terms as far as mitigation. And then the biggest part of it all is having the plans in place and the practice going towards making sure those plans are perfected over time and rehearsed. And I guess there's one other element that we haven't spoken too much today, but we received a presentation at council from Alberta Forestry, and I would really encourage anybody that wanted to learn more to watch the council meeting from early May. And they told us about all that they do in order to, work towards catching fires as soon as possible, whether that be their watchtowers, whether that be their reconnaissance flights that they do regularly, and the fact that they have more firefighters at their disposal this year than they did last year. So all of this stuff, it really made me feel a lot better. I won't say completely comfortable. I mean, like all of you, through the summer and with the fire seasons, I have a low-grade anxiety that's continuously going. And but they made me feel more comfortable knowing that there's a very large system at work to protect us. And so, Caitlin, what would you like to add with regards to short, midterm, and long-term fire mitigation?
Yeah, just to echo your sentiments about Alberta Forestry and them coming to that presentation on May 7th, that was, just so indicative of how great of a relationship we have with them and how intertwined our plans are. So we have a mutual aid agreement with Alberta Forestry for wildfire response, and they are great partners to work with. We won't be alone during a response. Unified command will happen pretty much immediately, which is really exciting to practice and to have those great relationships. And we don't just have great relationships with Alberta Forestry, we have great relationships with the town of Banff, the MD of Bighorn, and Kananaskis Improvement District. They're key players. And even just this week, we were talking, all the directors of emergency management from all the municipalities were talking about potential grant funding, because we really see it as a holistic problem and a holistic effort to mitigate wildfire. No municipality can do it alone. The Community Fire Guard application, as you mentioned, had all of us on it. And we even engaged with Parks Canada because though they wouldn't have participated on the grant side, it's just really important to know what mitigation they're doing so that we can appropriately plan our mitigation. So we are always looking for new and innovative ways to mitigate wildfire. We're looking at all of the different technologies that are out there and how they might be applied in Canmore, in the Bow Valley, or how we might advocate for their use with Alberta Forestry as well. I think with the Community Fire Guard planning that we're doing this year, along with the draft Bow Valley vegetation management strategy that we'll be getting from Alberta Forestry, Those are two really good planning documents that we can use to plan our more medium and long-term mitigation efforts. We continue to look for ways internally to talk about wildfire and wildfire risk as well. And I'm not sure if everyone has heard, but last year the U of A and UBC started a joint research project on wildfire behavior. There was a survey that was sent out to everyone, and those preliminary results are starting to be shared with us to help us with our planning, which really helps with mitigating the impact of a wildfire if it happens in town. And through that, it's kind of kickstarted some conversations with different departments that maybe weren't directly involved before, but as to what their roles are. And we're just looking at it in a different way than we have been before. We are so fortunate to be able to learn from the other wildfires that are happening within the province and outside of the province. There's so many learnings that we're able to use as we progress, and technologies and innovations just keep building. I think we've had a lot of emails with new technologies over the past year as well, things to consider, things to try, and nothing's off the table. We need to be creative and open-minded with what we're looking at. So we'll continue with the Fire Smart work that we do. We'll continue with the community fire guard planning that we do. We'll continue to look at new Fire Smart initiatives as we move forward with our planning. And we'll continue to keep the community informed as to what's new, what they can do, and what they can apply for, or how they can help keep Canmore safe from wildfire.
Thanks for that, Caitlin. I'm seeing a couple of comments and questions in the chat just related to where the community preparedness guide can be found, where we sign up to Voyant Alert. So as Mayor Krausert alluded to, one of the easiest ways is to use the search bar at the top of the website, type in emergency preparedness. It'll take you right there. Also, the short link to go right there, the direct URL is canmore.ca/emergency preparedness. So if those would be the two easiest ways to find that. And moving on to our next question, Mayor Krausert. If there is a potential evacuation, can there be daily Voyant Alert updates, or more frequent if necessary, as some of us don't live on our phones?
You know, there will be lots of updates. I take it that the essence of the question is that, you know, at such and such a time each day will we have one big update to catch everybody up. I think that's you know, obviously something that's very, very doable, but the updates are going to come much more frequently than that. In the case of emergency, as information is needed to be known by residents, it will be shared with residents. And so if in fact you don't typically live on your phone, during an emergency, I suggest you keep it very close to you, or your landline or your neighbor, and or the radio, site. All of these places will have information.
Yeah, and
Sorry, Adam, I'll just add one thing there. I think it's really important that as an evacuation, it's important to be informed of a potential evacuation. It's important to be informed during an evacuation, and it is very important to be informed after an evacuation. So if Canmore is evacuated, please go to the emergency reception center, wherever that might be. It might be within our community, it might be in a different community, and register there so that we know how to get a hold of you and we know that you have been evacuated. It's also a great way to be sure that you are eligible for any supports that might be available during an evacuation. And if they will there tell you how to stay informed as well. So very important that if we do have an evacuation, that even after you've evacuated, you stay informed with the Town of Canmore official channels. We will keep updating until it's safe to return home, and then even after that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. Our next question is, what is the RCMP's role during an emergency or an evacuation?
I'm going to go straight to Caitlin for that one.
Yeah, so the RCMP generally take the lead role during an evacuation, and that's because they have authorities to close highways and redirect traffic. So they'll often lead it with support from Canmore Fire Rescue, Canmore Municipal Enforcement, Kananaskis Mountain Rescue, other mutual aid partners, so BAMF. We would also rely on some of our partners like Volker Steven to help and assist with that evacuation, but they really take on that lead coordinating role.
Thanks for that, Caitlin. And Mayor Krausert, our next question, and Caitlin, you might need your assistance here as well. I've heard there will be a multi-agency disaster preparedness exercise later this spring, summer. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I'll
Okay,
just jump right in. So late December, the town of Banff applied for an Alberta Community Partnership grant, and we were quickly awarded that grant. And it's for an interoperability exercise. So we're focusing around a mass casualty, mass fatality, mass violence event that will have folks from our police services, so RCMP, Calgary Police are going to participate as well. Our fire rescue services across all the municipalities, some of our other agencies like Kananaskis Mountain Rescue, Alberta Health Services, their emergency medical services will be participating. And the focus will be around a mass violence event, so like an active threat, active shooter style event, because if you can work under that high stress situation, you can apply that to a number of different type of scenarios. So mass event on the highway, for example, where there's a number of casualties. We're in a unique position where even in Canmore, we have a number of different dispatch systems. So how you get dispatched from 911 to the RCMP is different than how you get dispatched to Canmore Fire Rescue, and Banff is different as well. They use a different system. So working with the different dispatches is another way that we're going to be looking at how we can increase our interoperability, and just getting in the same room and being able to share the different perspectives that all the different agencies bring to the table is a really exciting thing to be able to practice. And so we're going to do that with our joint risk assessments, how we prioritize in an event, and that should be happening in September. So we're really looking forward to that.
I would just add a couple of things there. Some might ask, well, why that as opposed to, focusing on wildfires? And well, the simple answer is that's what the grant was for, is to do the mass casualty event. And as Caitlin says, it does sharpen the skills that are transferable to other situations. For those who may have joined a little bit late, I would encourage you to watch the recording of this. If you didn't catch the 15-minute update that was provided, it was also noted that just this year, the town has participated in 3 sessions for rehearsing in dealing with emergencies. So, there's active training going on. There's active refinement to our plan. There's active meetings quarterly on one front with the emergency partners, but also weekly to assess all the risks in Canmore. So this is an active top of mind file.
Thanks for that to both of you. Our next question, and Mayor Krausert, you alluded to this in your presentation with the Community Emergency Preparedness Guide that we're currently working on to come out later in May. But are there other public versions of our municipal emergency management plan that the public can access and download off of the town's website?
Once again, going to emergency preparedness, there's a section called Town of Canmore Emergency Plans, and it talks to the municipal emergency management plan. It's relatively high level. If you're looking for what do you do in this exact instance, if under these exact conditions at this exact time, what do I do? you're not going to be able to find that, because that level of detail is not suitable for public consumption. We've got, literally binders and binders and binders of stuff. But it's also not helpful if people try to find out exactly what they're supposed to do in a particular situation and they don't know all of the circumstances. They very well could be driving themselves or putting themselves in harm's way. And that's how people die in these emergency evacuations, is by going the wrong way or not doing what they're asked to do. And so the best thing I can say is you can find out those plans and how it all works together on the town website. But the best thing to do is to get yourself prepared with an emergency kit, make your emergency plan for your particular circumstances. Let's say kids in school, and how are they going to be connected with you, making sure that you know what to take with you and where it is when you need to go. And most importantly, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, sign up for Voyant Alert.
That's great. Thank you. Our next question. The fuel load in the Georgetown Trail area is substantial. I know it isn't the town's area and you do coordinate with other agencies. Are there specific conversations and actions to reduce the fuel load in the area that are in the works? And if so, what's the plan?
So I mentioned the Bow Valley Wildfire and Vegetation Management Plan. That's moving ahead. It really is something that is multi-jurisdictional, and the municipalities in our area, led by Canmore, have applied for funding to develop the detailed planning around those fuel modifications. This is something that is the first time that it's been offered, and we jumped right on it along with our municipal partners to make sure that we're getting ahead of it. Earlier this year, actually the end of last year, before Christmas, I was advocating to Minister Lowen to please move forward with the Bow Valley Wildfire and Vegetation Management Plan, and please provide the resources that we can affect the fuel loads that are in those areas beyond our limits. And that's exactly what's happening. It's not happening fast enough for any of us because these things take a little bit of time, but it is happening. And so that's a really positive step forward.
Thank you, Mayor Krausert. We're getting down to our last 5 or 6 minutes here. So if there are more questions, feel free to submit them. We do have a couple more to get through. Our next one is, how will the town of Canmore manage visitors during an emergency?
Let Caitlin speak to that, but I know that Tourism Canmore Kananaskis and the Canmore Hotel and Lodging Association is very much part within the loop, and also on the Voyant Alert system, and all part of our plans have included dealing with that population that exists within our town beyond our residents. And Caitlin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Krausert. So Tourism Canmore Kananaskis does have a member on the Canmore Emergency Management Agency. So they regularly are informed of the town of Canmore's activities. I know that they're also informed of what's going on in Kananaskis as well. And we work with them on ideas of how we can best reach their visitors and how they can help us reach visitors. So a good example of that is this year we are taking out an ad in Where magazine to help push Voyant Alert, because anybody can sign up for Voyant Alert. So even a visitor who's here in town, Voyant Alert is used by Banff, the MD of Bighorn, and ourselves. So there's a lot of benefit to visitors of being informed while they're here and being informed of what those hazards are. I also recently spoke with the Canmore Hospitality and Lodging Association and did some work with them on how they could prepare visitors and inform them of what the hazards are and how to keep them safe. And we had a really good discussion about what actions they could take to make sure that they are prepared if there's an evacuation, are prepared to support us if there's a need for additional lodging for residents evacuating. But really, when people are here visiting our community, they're a part of our community, and we want to make sure that they stay safe as well.
Right, and I would add, I'm reminded that last summer, when there was some terrible fires up north and some evacuations happening into communities such as Spruce Grove, the mayor of Spruce Grove reached out to me, and I connected his emergency management person with Caitlin, because they needed some assistance and advice on planning and how to deal with a population that is a temporary population greater than their permanent residents, and so we were able some support there. So, you know, that is something that we definitely have as part of our planning, because it's very much part of our reality.
Thanks for that. And we're getting down to likely almost our last question of the evening. We just got another one in the chat here. There's been lots of fire smart thinning around peaks of Grassy, which is now outside the 10-minute response limit, but nothing has been done in the Quarry Lake forests that have lots of fuel. Why not, since the town is co-manager of those lands?
Good question. I'll let somebody else speak to that. I do want to say something about the 10-minute response plan. That is, first of all, incredibly larger than it was even months ago, because now we've completed our transition to having 4 firefighters on the floor in the hall at all times. And that was one of the greatest hindrances to having a response time that was at all satisfactory beyond a very small circle to meet that 10-minute response. And then the 10-minute response is really about building code. It's about what if you're outside of the 10-minute response, your house has to be built with certain type of materials and certain things that if you're inside the 10-minute response, you wouldn't necessarily have had to have had. So that's what that response is all about. But specifically around thinning around Quarry Lake, I don't have any information about that. Caitlin, do you have any information on that?
Well, the way that we plan where we do our fire smart is based off of the risk, the potential of a wildfire in the area, how quickly it would spread, and how it would affect structures. So though there has been fire smart and fuel management done in the Quarry Lake area as recently as last year. I actually toured it myself with our consultant, and he took us through and did a little tour of the space that is between Quarry Lake and Spray Lakes Road, 742 there. So there has been work that's been done in and around the Quarry Lake area. As we continue to plan, so what's really great about the Bow Valley vegetation management strategy and the work that we're doing on community fire guards is that we'll be able to prioritize what areas should be looked at next for future grant planning by looking at all of the risk to the area, the risk to structures, and how quickly we're going to, or what order we are going to do these things in. The 10-minute response time really doesn't have anything to do with our wildfire preparedness plans. That's really on a more individual level. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, because they don't really interact at all. They're two very different things.
Yeah. A couple of things I would add. One is the Quarry Lake area itself acts as a fire break because it's a wide open area. The other thing is, I just saw somebody pop up, there's only 42 people on this call. Well, it is being recorded. It is going to be on our website, and it is going to be shared. This is, somebody asked, we should have a public information session. This is a public information session, and we're using it to tell others. I hope that all 42 of you not only sign up to Voyage Alert, but you tell all your families members to sign up to Voyage Alert, all your friends and coworkers to sign up to Voyage Alert. And if you each tell 10 people, all of a sudden you're at 500, and if each of those tell 10 people, we're at 5,000. And then we've pretty much got everybody, because we've already got over 3,000 or 4,000. And so almost every household should be signed up by then, as far as number of households go. So, please share this information, direct people to the website, Emergency Preparedness, direct people to Voyant Alert that's on that website, and keep your eyes open for this information. It's all of our responsibilities to be informed. To be a resident means to seek out the information and keep yourself informed. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you. Go find it. It's there, and we have been promoting it. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you that have come today, because you are the front line in spreading this word and getting it out. And once again, if you have any information or have any questions that you would like answered, you can send them to me at Sean, SEAN Krausert, KRAUSERT @canmore.ca. And if I can't answer your question, I will pass it along to whoever else is best to answer the question. And I hope that everybody has a good night. If you're not enjoying the beautiful evening outside, I hope that you're inside watching the Oilers beat the Canucks. And so with that, have a good night, everyone.